You know how Matt Walsh always jokes around by saying, like, oh, the Media Matters is calling me a fascist. So who's called me a white supremacist today?
He has theocratic fascist in his Twitter bio, ironically, of course.
That's
Ironically.
so funny.
But, you know, part of the reason why you do that ironically is the same. There's sort of a punk situationist quality to it. What the Sex Pistols did, based upon McLaren's reading of the Situationists in Guy Debord, was to build the critique into the that which would be critiqued. And if you build the critique into it, in other words, like for the Sex Pistols, their inability to play instruments well was part of the charm, if you will. The fact that they couldn't play.
The fact that the show sometimes has technical difficulties.
Yes, we do that here, without a doubt. Oh, the reason why I was like, we got to do this live is because I don't want to spend any time editing. I don't want to have to, like, I'm not going to pay somebody to take all the ahs and ums out of what I'm doing. I'm not going to make any money.
It'll only be a 20-minute show.
It'll be like a 20-minute show, and it's going to cost me, like, I'm going to have to pay to do the show. There's going to be so many editors working on taking those things out.
AI might be able to.
So what you're saying is you're punk as hell.
What I'm saying is the reason why Matt Walsh puts into his Twitter bio, what is it again?
Theocratic fascist.
Yeah, is because he knows one day it's going to be quite obvious he's a theocratic fascist.
One day?
Well, that's part of the...
Most days it might be obvious that he's a theocratic fascist.
Lance over at the Serfs has uncovered some audio of Matt Walsh back in 2011.
Which was just him doing a show, right?
No, I don't think it was him doing a show. It was a hot mic.
No, this was from a radio show that he.
Oh, it was from a radio show?
Or maybe as in it's with his co-host. He's speaking with his co-host.
Okay, because I guess it's from WZBH Radio, but I thought it was sort of like off because
it's with his host. It might not be on air, but it's with his co-host.
Right. I think it's not. I think it was during commercial breaks. I have a feeling is what we're hearing.
Well, that's
because the audio on the original is really, really bad, but Lance has pumped it up. Walsh sounds a little bit different, but you will recognize his voice, and he's talking to his co-host Andrew Crank Murr, and. There's a couple of clips of this. It's
Walshy and the Crank.
Walsh and the Crank. It's mornings on WZBH Radio, where you get the best of the fascists. Here it is.
Bringing the culture with them, of course they're going to. Of course they're going to. That's what makes them Mexican. Of course they will. That is not.
I'm saying if they stop identifying themselves as just Mexicans and they start, appreciating the country that they currently reside.
What is the country? I mean,
America.
Well, then, what does that mean? If you take away the Anglo-Saxon culture, which is what started this damn country.
Yeah, but
not damn country.
You can adopt philosophies. Is my point. So
that's Matt Walsh speaking right there, right? His voice sounds different.
It sounds a little bit different. You can hear the pattern of him speaking, but it sounds a little bit different. But also part of it is because it's the audio is so amped up.
Right.
But
I can tell it's him. You can tell.
You can tell it's him.
Yeah.
Yes. Anglo-Saxon nature of the country. Go ahead.
Biggest nerds in the world.
Of course they will. That is not.
I'm saying if they stop identifying themselves as just Mexicans and they start, appreciating the country that they currently reside.
What is the country? I mean,
America.
Well, then, what does that mean? If you take away the Anglo-Saxon culture, which is what started this damn country.
Yeah, but you can
not damn country.
You can adopt philosophies. Is my point. So I'm confused by race or culture. Like, what are you promoting?
Both. You can't separate them. They're the same. What I'm saying is not like I'm making this up. This has just been the case. Go back through history. This is just the way it works. Is that a country is more than just a border. It's more than just a plot. If all America was just like a plot of land we happen to be sitting on, then it would mean nothing to me. Okay. But because it's also identified with a way of thinking, a way of life, a culture, a philosophy.
Pause it for 1 second. I just be clear. I just want to reiterate. This recording is from 2011. not from 1775.
Because he says there, race and culture, you can't separate them, and then goes on to say that the United States has a distinct culture. That's
An
why
Anglo-Saxon
one that
culture.
he loves.
Now,
It's so weird. It's so weird that that's what that's his take there, because that means, and I'm just trying to like reach the logical conclusion, that he feels like the only legitimate culture that is American is one that is a white Anglo-Saxon vision. Is it not true that would be the natural conclusion one would draw?
without a doubt. And to be clear, when the country was founded, there wasn't just white people here. Even if you go back to like who was in charge, it may have been just white people, white men, who were signing the Declaration of Independence. But if you're talking about a country and you're talking about who's here, it wasn't just white people.
Yeah.
But that's the one that's the culture that he's talking about. We only have a white culture in this country, according to him.
Sitting on, that it would mean nothing to me. Okay. But because it's also identified with a way of thinking, a way of life, a culture, a philosophy, because that was all there, and it was an Anglo-Saxon thing, then, you that's what I identify with. It's not the location and the geography that I identify with. Yeah, I like the rolling hills and I like the Purple Mountains majesty and all that too. But what I like most is the culture and philosophy that was distinctly Western Anglo-Saxon. And that's what it was. And so when these other groups come and you say, well, as long as they don't bring but they have brought their culture with them. So you can say as long as they don't, but they have and they will continue to. So let's forget about that, because that's exactly what they're doing. And of course, why wouldn't they, when the original inhabitants, the original inhabitants, of course, were Native Americans, but forget about them for a second, everyone else has. When the original inhabitants of at least the United States of America are dying off because we've decided we're too cool to have kids, then why wouldn't they bring their culture? Because there's a cultural void. What I'm saying is that when we die off, as we have been, we have left a cultural void. And that void will be filled with this other hodgepodge of cultures. And I'll tell you something else. When you have just a geographical location, when there's no agreement at all.
Like this guy talking about culture, like he embodies the cultural degradation of this country. Like I'm not a William F. Buckley fan. I think people like masturbate over how valuable it is to like hear the opposite side in Buckley's position in that. But like Matt Walsh is a definite downgrade.
Oh my God.
Over like,
well, without a
even
doubt,
as talented
Yeah.
as Ben Shapiro
Right.
on his own network.
and so like, sorry, man, like you've embodied what you're concerned about.
Well, I mean, even on his own terms, like, what possible difference does that make? If you're saying that there's a cultural void, then what possible difference does it make? I mean, you had no problem with the replacing of the culture that existed here before Anglo-Saxons came in and decided to
But that was
steal the
righteous.
country.
Because we did it we were more mighty, the
This
whites
is-
with guns and our might. But then why? Then if that's the case, as you say, Sam, then he should be accepting of other people coming in, because that's just the
natural order of things.
Yeah, right.
But that is the part that like makes him an unequivocal white supremacist. Because when the white people came in and eliminated the existing culture through, let's be clear, violence,
Yeah.
it's okay. But the idea that when white people, according to him, refuse to have kids by their own dumbness and create a cultural void, I mean, this is just like taking it on his own terms. Because the whole race culture thing is really...
It's in bullshit.
It's the updated version of saying one race
But-
is smarter than the other. It's just one culture is better than the other.
But putting that aside, even based upon his own thing, it reveals his white supremacy. I mean, like
Totally.
virulent white supremacy. Is there more on this one?
On what's important to you, what your values are and all that, that country cannot exist for very long. And that's where civil wars come from. That's why we fought the Civil War to begin with, was because there was a cultural difference between the North and the South. And we're going to be heading that way again if we don't say, okay, this is who we are.
Pause it for one
And,
second. What was the cultural difference? Was it? I remember when all of those. This to be clear, that it was the Republicans in this instance in the North who are like, the mint julep upsets me so much, and this whole thing with like all of their
Seersucker
small
suits.
their small talk.
Yeah, they're please
Hi,
and
how
thank
are
you.
Hospitality.
Oh, come on in. Let me get you a drink.
Yeah.
I haven't seen you. Well, what a pleasure. I can't stand that.
The punch bowl.
Let's get those
Yeah.
cannons going.
Lemonade on the porch. Time for war.
It was a culture war that became a civil war. My God. Go ahead.
On what's important to you, what your values are, and all that, that country cannot exist for very long, and that's where civil wars come from. That's why we fought the Civil War to begin with, was because there was a cultural difference between the North and the South, and we're going to be heading that way again if we don't say, okay, this is who we are, and by the way, the people saying this is who we are need to be plentiful and strong.
I agree.
and potent.
I just personally feel that you don't have to be an Anglo-Saxon to continue that line of thought. I just think people need to be more patriotic about the country in which they live, know more about its heritage and where it came from and how it sprang about. I mean, I married somebody that's, I don't think Maria's Anglo-Saxon, and she definitely has left her culture at the door. So, I mean, if Maria and I have 5 kids, like now I'm confused. Am I perpetuating the problem or
See, you keep bringing this up, and it makes me look like I'm making some racist point. I know you say that's what you're trying to do, but that's
making a racist
obviously
point.
not what I'm saying. Have relations and kids with whoever you fall in love with. That's great, as long as it's the same gender. I'm fine with that. All I'm saying is that
What did he say?
I think he meant to say as long as they're a different gender, but
A
he said as
different
long as they're
gender.
the same gender.
Yeah, exactly.
obviously
Yeah.
not what I'm
Love is love, except for when it's not.
like now I'm confused. Am I perpetuating the problem or
See, you keep bringing this up, and it makes me look like I'm making some racist point. I know you say that's what you're trying to do, but that's obviously not what I'm saying. Have relations and kids with whoever you fall in love with. That's great, as long as it's the same gender. I'm fine with that. All I'm saying is that as a general rule, for our culture and our identity to continue, we need to just procreate and keep that culture going. Because you say, well, come over here and have some patriotism and identify with us. Why should they identify with us when we don't identify with us? When it's not even important enough to us to procreate and continue our culture, why should they give a damn about it? They don't. I don't blame them. I mean,
it's also conflating sort of like nationality with culture, which of course is him conflating nationality with race. Is essentially what he's doing. I mean, that's exactly what he's doing.
And it's the white Anglo-Saxon that part that he loved, which when you put that together, that's called it's the nationalism, and then the white Anglo-Saxon part. And then
It's almost like you call it like white nationalism.
I mean, that's a great point, Sam.
But it's funny because it's like such nerdy white nationalism where I think I'm excluded from this. I don't think I don't descend from Anglo-Saxon people. It's like Bohemian or whatever the hell. Like, it's funny to like be so exclusive that like you're cutting out like even like people who like have their entire lives been consider themselves white.
He doesn't even recognize how racist he is in this. It's fascinating, and his like
Stop making me feel racist.
and the guy named
co-host.
the Crank is just like laying out what he's saying, and when he hears it back, he's like, "That sounds racist." I'm not saying anything like that.
Right.
I'm just saying that if we don't, and by we I mean white people, don't keep having children, then the non-white people are going to replace us. I mean, this guy's going to stumble in, and like if you give this guy enough time, he's literally. It's like if you put like 5 monkeys into like a room, like he's gonna end up like basically just writing out Mein Kampf without realizing it.
Yeah, make like a clan hoods.
Go back a little bit.
continue, we need to just procreate and keep that culture going. Because you say, well, come over here and have some patriotism and identify with us. Why should they identify with us when we don't identify with us? When it's not even important enough to us to procreate and continue our culture, why should they give a damn about it? They don't. I don't blame them. I mean, what exact philosophy and values have we shown that are so important to us?
But I mean, I think the point is that if you're patriotic Americans that love the country, that have ingrained themselves in this country for several generations, need to start promoting more generations of people.
But it's easy to say these vague things like, well, promote and do this and that. But it's the reality. If we actually want to talk about how to solve the problem, It's real simple, but it involves us all actually doing something, which, like I said a million times now, is frankly just having kids and passing that down to your kids.
Passing down the whiteness. I mean, remember, again, culture equals race to him. And you cannot, and culture also equals patriotism and nationality. That, I mean, like,
imagine having a kid and here's my cultural vessel.
Well, that's exactly how they. I mean, I've spoken about and said how these conservative parents are just like essentially narcissists in the way they conceive of having their kids. They want them to be extensions of themselves, and in like Matt Walsh's case, that's whiteness. But it's also shows how childbirth, it's like an existential thing if you're a white nationalist, and it makes it a lot easier for you to understand why abortion is used or they want to limit it so aggressively, because in their mind women are there to be the vessels for the continuation of the values that they want to impose on the world.
Is that it? Is there more?
There's like 30 seconds.
Yeah, let's listen to the last one.
If you don't do that, then you're not helping the problem. Sorry, you're not. You're not helping. I mean, we can all say how we'll just promote the values of this and that. But the way you promote values is to have children and pass it on to them.
What?
And if you don't do that, then it's just vague platitudes that mean nothing. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just what it is. And, and I'm no exemption from that. I mean, if I'm 40 and I haven't had a single kid, then I haven't helped. Everyone make their own. I'm just talking in general. The way in general that this country will reclaim itself, that's the way. Or we can become extinct. If that's the route we choose.
We Anglo-Saxons.
Hey, it was a good run. Got a good 300 years out of it, almost.
In other words, if the country becomes less white, or as he says, to be fair, with different cultures and races and nationalities, even if they come in and switch their nationalities to American, they're still like culturally and racially not part of the thing. And this is where his whole like little sort of thing breaks down. If people of different races or cultures come into this country, there is no evolution of this country. There's only death. That's his argument. We're extinct. That's his argument.
I can't wait till Anglo-Saxons are extinct.
Also, the imperative of having children is why he's like, you got to have a bunch of children, which is why I think he was advocating, somewhat after this. But a couple of years ago, when he was sitting in his car out in front of a high school, that, 16 is you're fertile.
Get them early. Get them in early. I mean, if you want to repopulate the United States, you got to start getting girls pregnant at like 13, 14, 15. If you're really serious about it. Right when they hit puberty. When they're at their most fertile. I mean, are we going to ask
Anglo-Saxon?
Are we going to ask them? No, but, they're doing their duty.
There's Matt Walsh before he discovered the multi-level marketing program of transphobia.